The sharp sound of high heels echoed across the glossy marble floor of Benjamin's group of companies that morning. Sophia Uche, the famed personal assistant to the CEO himself, stormed into the lobby with her signature confidence. Her black pencil skirt hugged her curves perfectly, and the red designer handbag swinging from her shoulder screamed power and class. She didn't just walk, she owned every step. Suddenly, her steps halted. A splash. Sophia looked down. Her handbag had been stained, just slightly, with water. Her face froze in disbelief. Her polished eyes traced the source of the mess, and there he was. An elderly cleaner, stooped with age, was crouching nearby with a mop and a bucket of soapy water. His hands trembled as he tried to clean up a corner near the entrance. The water must have splashed from his mop, unintentionally of course. But Sophia didn't care about intention. "What is wrong with you, old man?" she shouted, eyes wide with fury. The man quickly dropped his mop and raised his hands in apology. "I'm so sorry, madam. It was a mistake." "Do you know how much this bag costs?" Sophia roared, lifting her soaked handbag as if it had been attacked by acid. "This is Sophia Uche, you're talking to, personal assistant to the CEO. How dare you?" The man bowed slightly, still apologizing, his voice shaking. "Please forgive me." But the apology only fueled her anger. Before anyone could stop her, Sophia kicked him. The heel of her shoes struck his thigh, and the old man stumbled backward with a cry of pain, falling to the floor. Gasps filled the air. Some of the staff in the lobby froze. Others turned away in shock. The old man groaned softly on the ground, his face creased with pain. But Sophia wasn't done. "You people should learn to stay in your place. Look at you. Your poor and lazy children probably sent you here to suffer. This bag, your entire generation can't afford it. Next time, clean like a human being and not a goat with a bucket." With a dramatic hiss, she adjusted her handbag and marched off without a glance back, her heels clacking again as if nothing happened. The old man lay there for a moment, blinking through the tears in his eyes. Another cleaner, a woman in her 40s, rushed to help him up. "Papa, are you okay?" she whispered. The man nodded gently and stood with her help. Nobody knew what was coming next, not even Sophia, because the man she had just humiliated was Benjamin Okafor, the silent billionaire, and the father of her boss. Just minutes later, Sophia was in her office on the 7th floor, completely unbothered. Her desk was neat, her laptop on. She began replying to emails and arranging the meeting schedule for the day. The cleaner, forgotten like a stain wiped away. She sipped from her glass of fruit juice when her phone rang. It was Mr. Jude Benjamin, her boss. "Come downstairs. Now," he said sharply before the call ended. Sophia blinked. His voice sounded urgent, strange. Why would he call her downstairs like that? They usually met upstairs or in the boardroom. She grabbed her phone and walked quickly to the elevator, smoothing her blouse and fixing her lipstick as the doors closed. Something felt off. When she stepped into the lobby, her eyes met something that froze the breath in her throat. Standing tall in a sleek navy blue suit, clean-shaven and proud, was the same old man she had kicked, now completely transformed. Beside him, her boss, Jude Benjamin. Sophia's heartbeat doubled. She walked closer, her feet suddenly feeling heavy. "Sophia," Jude said, his tone icy, "is there something you want to tell me about what happened this morning?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I... "Be bold," the old man interrupted gently but firmly. His voice was steady now, his eyes locked on hers. "You had no problem speaking earlier. Say it again. Say it to my son." Sophia's lips trembled. Jude turned slowly to his father. "Please, Dad, go ahead." She gasped. "Dad?" That's when it hit her. The cleaner she humiliated, the one she kicked, the man she called poor and useless, was the father of her boss, the father of one of the most powerful young billionaires in Nigeria. Her knees gave way, and she collapsed to the floor. Please, sir. I didn't know. I often do this," Mr. Okafor said calmly. "I go around, in disguise, to see how the people in this company treat others. especially those beneath them. I didn't come to look for praise. I came to see if Jude has built a company that respects humanity, not just money. And today, Sophia, you failed." Jude's face was stone cold. He looked at her, disappointed. "I trusted you to represent me. You've embarrassed everything this company stands for." "Sir, please," Sophia cried, grabbing Mr. Okafor's feet. "Please forgive me. Give me one more chance. I promise I will change. Please." But Mr. Okafor shook his head. "We don't need empty promises. We need actions. And today, you showed your heart." Right there in front of everyone, Sophia was dismissed. The driver who had brought her that morning was told to return with the company car, but without her. Sophia stood in the lobby, shaking, humiliated, broken. Everyone who once feared her now watched silently as she picked up her handbag and walked slowly out of the building. When Sophia returned home to the small apartment she shared with her widowed mother, Olivia, she didn't say a word. Her mother asked what was wrong. She couldn't speak. She stayed locked in her room, curled under the bedsheet, unable to eat or sleep. On the third day, the silence broke, but not with words. Sophia drank poison. Her mother found her on the floor, her mouth foaming, barely breathing. "Sophia!" Olivia screamed, holding her daughter and crying out into the street. Neighbors rushed in. Someone called an ambulance. They raced her to the small community hospital. And just when all hope seemed lost, something unexpected happened. The emergency ward of the small local clinic in Ajagunle was chaos. Nurses rushed in and out. A doctor barked orders, and Olivia held her daughter's hand, her knees on the floor, weeping like a child. "Please, God, not my daughter, not Sophia. Don't take her from me." Sophia's lips were pale, her eyes shut. Foam still clung to her mouth. Her breathing was shallow, almost non-existent. The doctor finally turned to Olivia and said, "Madam, we are trying our best, but this clinic doesn't have the facilities to treat poison cases. If we don't move her fast, we may lose her." Olivia collapsed forward and screamed, and that was the moment the door swung open. A man in a black suit with a private hospital badge stepped in, followed closely by none other than Mr. Jude Benjamin himself. Behind him was his father, Benjamin Okafor, his face tight with concern. Everyone froze. Olivia blinked in confusion. You're Sophia's boss." Jude nodded and moved quickly to the doctor. "We'll take her to Mercy Crest Private Hospital. My car is outside, and a team is on standby." Sophia was lifted carefully onto a stretcher. As they wheeled her out, Olivia followed closely, holding her daughter's hand the entire time. Inside the private hospital, time moved like a blur. Doctors moved fast. Nurses ran tests. Tubes were inserted. Her stomach was pumped. Monitors beeped. 3 hours later, Sophia opened her eyes, dimly. She blinked at the light above her. Then her gaze shifted to the left. There, sitting by her bedside, was her mother, her boss Jude, and Mr. Benjamin Okafor. Tears filled Sophia's eyes before a word escaped her mouth. Her lips trembled, and her fingers clutched the bedsheet weakly. I'm sorry." "You're awake," Olivia said, weeping with joy. Sophia turned her face away, ashamed. But then, a firm hand touched hers. It was Mr. Benjamin. "Don't look away, Sophia," he said gently. "We know what you did." She wept harder. "I didn't mean to. I thought my life was over." "And you thought ending your life would fix it?" he asked softly. Sophia didn't respond. Benjamin sighed and sat down beside her bed. "You made a mistake, a big one, but mistakes are supposed to teach us, not end us." Jude leaned forward too. "I asked my father to come with me, because this wasn't about company policy anymore. It was about humanity." Sophia looked up at them through tears. "Mr. Benjamin continued, when I saw you lying on that hospital bed, I thought about your mother, the woman who raised you, sacrificed for you. What would become of her? What would become of your story? You've done wrong, Sophia, but you also deserve a second chance." Sophia's lips parted slightly, her voice barely audible. Why are you being so kind after what I did?" Jude answered this time. Because if we don't believe in second chances, then none of us would be here today. Sophia turned to her mother, whose eyes were still moist with tears. I'm so sorry, Mama, she whispered. I failed you. Olivia shook her head, holding her daughter's hand tightly. No, my child. You're still here. That means God has not given up on you. Sophia spent another 2 days recovering in the private hospital. Nurses whispered about her. Some were kind, some judged. But she said nothing. She just listened, reflected, learned. On the day of her discharge, Jude and Mr. Benjamin returned. We've decided to reinstate you, Jude said as Sophia sat on the edge of her bed, now wearing a simple grey hospital gown. But not in your old role. She blinked. I understand. You'll return as an admin assistant. It's a demotion, yes. But it's also an opportunity. I'll take it, she said, without hesitation. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Sophia, Mr. Benjamin added, his tone soft yet steady. Kindness doesn't reduce you. It lifts others, and it lifts you too. She nodded. I've learned. I swear I've learned. When Sophia walked back into Benjamin's group of companies the following Monday, the building no longer felt like her kingdom. The staff looked at her with curiosity. Some snickered. Others avoided her. But she didn't walk with her head high anymore. She smiled at the front desk receptionist. She greeted the security men outside. She even carried her lunch in a simple black tote, no designer bags, no loud heels. And when she passed the cleaning crew on her way to the elevator, she paused. One of them, the same cleaner who helped Mr. Benjamin off the floor that day, looked at her nervously. Sophia walked up to her. I'm sorry for everything I did before. I hope you can forgive me, she said with a bow. The woman smiled gently. Welcome back. Sophia entered the elevator. For the first time in a long while, she felt free. But life still had one more surprise waiting for her. It had been 3 months since Sophia returned to Benjamin's group of companies, not as the powerful personal assistant, but as a quiet administrative assistant tucked into a shared office on the 3rd floor. Her new desk was smaller, no private office, no driver, no calls from foreign investors, no seat at board meetings. But strangely, Sophia didn't complain. She arrived early every morning, smiled at everyone, joined the janitors for lunch in the company courtyard, and even helped restock paper for the printers in the common room. Most people didn't understand what had happened to her. They only knew that something had changed. The Sophia who once barked orders like royalty now listened when messengers spoke. When a younger intern once dropped a cup of tea on her desk, Sophia helped clean it with her own handkerchief. The arrogance that once made her untouchable had melted into humility. But there was one person who hadn't yet spoken to her since her return, Benjamin Okafor. She often saw him from afar whenever he visited his son or toured the building in his quiet, observant way. He had once visited the 3rd floor pantry, and Sophia had rushed out the back before he saw her. But deep down, she knew she couldn't hide from him forever. One rainy Friday morning, as thunder rolled across the Lagos sky, Sophia got a message from the front desk. Mr. Benjamin Okafor requests to see you. Now. Her heart skipped. Her fingers trembled as she fixed her scarf and took the elevator to the top floor, the executive wing. The hallway felt colder than she remembered. The walls, lined with gold-framed photos of past company milestones, now seemed to whisper lessons about pride, failure, and growth. When she entered the private lounge, she saw him. Mr. Benjamin stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, watching the rain slide down the glass. He didn't turn. Close the door, he said quietly. She obeyed. He finally turned to face her. She looked smaller now. Not physically, but emotionally. Her once proud chin was bowed, her voice quiet. You've been avoiding me, he said. Sophia swallowed. Yes, sir. Why? She looked up, eyes glassy. Because I didn't want to disappoint you again. I didn't want you to see the same girl who did what she did. He studied her. Sophia continued, voice cracking. I've changed, sir. Truly. I know it doesn't erase what I did, but I've learned. Every single day. Mr. Benjamin walked to the coffee table and sat down. I wasn't always rich, Sophia, he said. "I used to carry water on my head in the village just to help my mother. My first suit was borrowed, and I've been kicked too humiliated, just like I was that day by you." Sophia's hands were shaking now. "I came into that building that morning not just to test you, but to see if wealth had swallowed our humanity. And it had." She fell to her knees, unable to hold back her tears. "I wish I could go back and undo it. I wish I could be better that day." "But you couldn't," he said softly, "because that was who you were." Silence. Then he added, "But you are not her anymore." Sophia looked up, shocked. Mr. Benjamin smiled faintly. "You didn't choose healing the easy way. You didn't look for someone to blame. You faced it. You allowed yourself to break and rebuild." Sophia wept. Then something unexpected happened. Mr. Benjamin stood and pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat. He placed it on the table. "An opportunity," he said. She wiped her face. "Sir?" "That's an acceptance letter to an executive development course in South Africa. Fully sponsored. Top 5 from the program are offered positions in our new East Africa headquarters." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. "But I'm an admin assistant now." "Titles don't matter," he said. "Growth does. And I believe you're ready." Sophia stared at the paper, her fingers hovering just above it. "Why me?" "Because second chances," he said, "aren't given to the perfect. They're given to the willing." She couldn't hold back. She stood and hugged him. He didn't push her away. By the next week, Sophia had packed a small bag and traveled to Johannesburg for the 3-month training program. Her confidence slowly returned, but this time it came wrapped in grace. She aced her group presentations. She mentored a struggling single mother in her class. And every time she was asked why she worked so hard, she replied softly, "Because someone believed I was worth saving." But something else was waiting for her at the end of that program, something she never saw coming. His name was Clement. It started during a leadership exercise on crisis management. Clement, a quiet chemical engineer from Port Harcourt working with a top oil firm, was placed on her team. He was brilliant, reserved, respectful, and the only one who beat her in the final presentation score. But when he handed her a bottle of water after a long day and said with a smile, "You lead like you've been through fire," she knew something deeper had begun. He didn't ask about her past, he saw her future. And as their friendship deepened into something more, Sophia found herself laughing again, truly laughing. One night, while walking along a quiet street in Johannesburg, Clement turned to her. "Would it be crazy if I told you I want to walk this road with you for the rest of my life?" Sophia's heart pounded. She looked up at the sky. The stars sparkled almost like they were winking at her. She smiled. "Only a little crazy. But I think I like crazy." When she returned to Nigeria 3 months later, she wasn't the same girl who once walked into that lobby like a queen. She walked in as a woman who had been broken, humbled, healed, and lifted again. But life had one final chapter waiting to be written, and it would change everything. The day Sophia returned to Nigeria, the air smelled like new beginnings. Benjamin's group of companies welcomed her like a quiet storm. There were no red carpets or confetti, but every staff member who had once doubted her now watched her with silent respect. She wasn't just the girl who got a second chance, she was the woman who earned it. Mr. Jude Benjamin personally welcomed her back with a warm handshake. "You made us proud," he said. Mr. Benjamin Okafor didn't say much, just smiled at her as if to say, "I told you so." Within weeks, Sophia was promoted again, not back to her former role, but higher. She was now the project director for community impact and culture, a new department focused on internal staff development and kindness culture. It was designed by Mr. Benjamin himself, inspired by the very test that once broke her pride. And under her leadership, the office changed. Cleaners now had lounge spaces and wellness programs. Interns had mentorship opportunities. And staff, regardless of title, were treated with dignity. But while her career soared, something sweeter brewed quietly in the background. Clement. They had stayed in touch after the Johannesburg program, but now they were inseparable. He flew into Lagos every weekend. They went to book fairs, volunteered at youth seminars, even had Amala dates in roadside bukas just to feel real together. Clement didn't care that Sophia had once fallen. He only cared that she got up. One sunny Saturday afternoon, Clement took her to a quiet beach in Lekki. Just the two of them, with the waves dancing to the sound of the wind. He knelt down on one knee, pulled out a small black box, and said, "I didn't come into your life to fix your past. I came to help you build the future you deserve. Will you marry me, Sophia Uche?" Tears spilled down her cheeks before the word even left her mouth. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." The wedding planning began, and unlike her past, it was filled with joy, laughter, and humility. Mr. Benjamin insisted on sponsoring the venue, a luxurious event center in Victoria Island, but only if the couple allowed 100 orphan children from nearby homes to attend as special guests. Sophia smiled through tears and said, "Yes, sir." Olivia, Sophia's mother, couldn't stop crying from the moment she was told about the proposal. "Your father would have been so proud," she kept saying. And so, 1 year after the day Sophia nearly lost everything, Lagos witnessed one of the most beautiful weddings in recent memory. The bride wore a flowing white gown with soft lace sleeves and carried a bouquet made of jasmine and hibiscus, her father's favorite flower. The groom, Clement, stood proud in a cream-colored agbada, smiling like he had won the world. Mr. Jude Benjamin, her billionaire boss, was the best man. And Benjamin Okafor? He walked Sophia down the aisle. That moment, as she held his arm and they walked slowly between rows of cheering guests, felt like a full circle. The man she once kicked, now giving her away. And yet, he looked proud, so proud. "I'm honored," he whispered as they approached the altar. "I'm grateful," Sophia whispered back. The reception was a celebration of grace. Orphan children danced with celebrities. There was laughter, jollof, rice, tears, and music. Sophia and Clement surprised everyone with a slow dance dedicated to their mothers. And then, something unexpected happened again. Midway through the evening, Sophia took the mic. She stood on stage, her hand gently resting on her stomach, a secret only Clement knew. "I have something to say," she began. The crowd went silent. "There was a time I thought my life was over, a time I thought a mistake had ruined my future. But today, I stand before you, not because I was perfect, but because I was given a second chance." She turned to Mr. Benjamin in the front row. "And because of you, sir, I learned that humility is power, and kindness is wealth." He nodded slowly, eyes misty. Sophia looked at her husband. "And, Clement, thank you for loving me even when I couldn't fully love myself." Then, she turned back to the crowd, her voice trembling now. 2 months from now, we'll be welcoming a baby boy into this world." Gasps and cheers filled the hall. Olivia clutched her chest in joy. "And we've decided," Sophia continued, "to name him Nenjmu. After the man who taught me that sometimes the people we look down on are the very ones sent to lift us up." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Cameras flashed, and Mr. Benjamin Okafor. He stood too, not just out of respect, but out of love. The night ended with fireworks over the Lagos skyline, and as Sophia sat beside her husband, hand in hand, she leaned in and whispered, "Everything changed the day I kicked a cleaner." And Clement, with a gentle smile, replied, "Or maybe everything changed the day he forgave you." But even with all this joy and redemption, Sophia's journey wasn't over yet, because life was about to throw her one final, unexpected twist. 3 years had passed. The sun shone through the nursery window of the elegant duplex Sophia, now called home in Lekki. On a soft blue mat lay little Nenjmu, now a 2-year-old bundle of curiosity, babbling as he built towers with alphabet blocks. Sophia stood quietly at the doorway, one hand resting on her growing belly. She was 6 months pregnant again, this time with a girl. Her life now was everything she once only dreamed of. Not perfect, no, but beautiful because it had been built with pain, forgiveness, and love. Clement walked in behind her, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "She kicks when I talk. She's already tired of me." Sophia laughed gently. "She just likes the sound of your voice. She's already Daddy's girl." They sat together in the nursery, watching Nenjmu knock over his own tower and giggle. Sophia whispered, "Sometimes I still think about that day. The marble floor, the mop, the mistake." Clement placed a hand over hers. "And you turned it into a legacy." Just a week later, Sophia was invited to speak at the company's first annual Culture of Kindness conference, launched as part of the same internal campaign she had helped design after her reinstatement. The conference hall was packed with top executives, staff, interns, journalists, and quietly in the back row sat Mr. Benjamin Okafor, as always in a navy blue suit, eyes thoughtful, hands folded. Sophia stood at the podium, pregnant, radiant, confident but grounded. "I was once known as the voice behind the boss," she began. "Sharp, excellent, articulate. But I lacked something far more important than skill." The room listened. "I lacked kindness." Murmurs filled the room. Those who knew the story glanced at one another. But Sophia didn't pause. "One morning, I kicked a man I thought was a cleaner. I humiliated him, insulted his family, and dismissed him because of his appearance. I thought I was powerful, but that moment revealed how empty I truly was." She looked toward the back of the room. "Today, that man is seated right there, and he chose not to punish me, but to teach me." Every eye turned to Mr. Benjamin, who gave a slow, approving nod. "He gave me something I never expected, a second chance, and that chance saved my life." Applause broke out across the room. Some stood, others wiped tears. "But this is not just my story," Sophia continued. "This is about every receptionist, every cleaner, every messenger, every voice unheard. If we want a better world, a better company, a better home, we must choose to see people, not just their titles." Later that evening, as she prepared to leave, Mr. Benjamin approached her backstage. "B, you spoke well," he said with a soft smile. Sophia smiled back. "You gave me the courage." He shook his head. "You found it yourself. I only showed you the mirror." A few months later, Sophia gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Grace, because in the end, that was what saved her, not just talent, not just effort, but grace. And every year after that, on the anniversary of her fall and rise, Sophia and Clement would host a free breakfast for all junior staff at Benjamin's group of companies. Now pregnant with a third child, she often walk into the cafeteria and smile at the newest janitor. "How's your first week been?" she would ask kindly. And if anyone watched her closely, they would see her glance at the marble floor. Not in shame, but in remembrance. Because that floor didn't just reflect her image, it once reflected her worst mistake and her greatest transformation. If you enjoy this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. The rain was heavy, turning the city street into a blur of motion and noise. Beneath the towering black gates of a luxury mansion in Maitama stood an old woman with cracked feet, an old bag balanced on her head, and her wrapper soaked to the skin. She didn't flinch under the storm. She stood firm, her eyes fixed on the massive gate, her heart pounding with quiet hope. It was Sandra. She had come all the way from her little village in Suka, alone, because something inside her could no longer bear the silence. The stories she heard, the faces that whispered, the TV screen that flashed her son's name, Jonathan Okoro, youngest billionaire CEO in Nigeria. While she struggled to buy firewood back home, it was time to see for herself. Suddenly, the gates opened inward. A sleek black Bentley with golden rims glided out. Sandra's heart leapt. She rushed forward, waving. "Jonathan! My son! My child!" Through the dark glass, she saw him, her son, her only child. Wearing a crisp blue agbada, his watch glinting, and seated beside him was a young woman in designer sunglasses and a red mini-dress Amara. Jonathan's eyes widened when he saw her. He slowed the car and rolled the window down. "Mama?" he muttered, confused. Sandra gave a weak smile. "Yes, it's me. I came to see you, my son." Please. It's raining. Let me enter." She reached for the car handle, but Amara leaned forward, her brows furrowed in disgust. "Babe, please don't. She's wet. Her clothes are dripping. She'll ruin the leather seats." Jonathan's lips trembled. "But that's my mother." Amara's tone sharpened. "You want me to miss my Dubai flight? It's in 30 minutes. We're already late. Tell the gateman to let her sit outside." Sandra stood there, watching the whispering. Her heart sank as she realized what was about to happen. Then Jonathan did the unthinkable. "I'm sorry, Mama," he said softly, not meeting her eyes. "Please wait. The gateman will attend to you. We'll talk when I return." And just like that, he drove off. The Bentley disappeared into the curtain of rain. Sandra remained at the gate, soaked, her hands trembling as she clutched her wet bag tighter. She didn't wait for the gateman. She turned around and walked away, slowly, each step heavier than the last. Her son, the one she worked under the sun to train, the one she carried bricks for at the construction site, just to buy his textbooks, had left her in the rain for a woman he had only known for 2 years. That night, Sandra boarded a dusty bus back to the village. The ride was long. No one spoke to her. She didn't cry. But when she got home, she lay on her worn mattress, staring at the ceiling as tears quietly soaked her pillow. She didn't blame Jonathan. She just hoped he would realize the truth before it was too late. But while Sandra prayed quietly in her room, Jonathan was living in denial. To him, he had done nothing wrong. He justified it in his mind. "She's my mother. She raised me. Yes, but that was her job, right? After all, didn't every parent do that?" He had a company to run, a high-maintenance fiancée to please. Amara always wanted the best trips to Dubai, Maldives, the finest jewelry, luxury villas in Lekki. So Jonathan kept working, kept building, while Amara kept spending. Until, one morning, everything changed. It started with a strange notification, $20,000 missing from the company's account, then another, then more. Before sunset, millions were gone. Every single money he labored for. He called his tech team, shouting into the phone, "Track it! Who has access to this account?" Only one person did besides him. Amara. She had insisted on helping him manage the account. She had his passwords, his trust. They checked the IP logs, he shouted angrily. It showed Nairobi, Kenya. Jonathan's blood went cold. "What? I thought she was in Dubai." Posted pictures. The pictures were all fake. Amara never went to Dubai. She had boarded a flight to Kenya. And now, she was gone. Just like that, everything vanished. His company, his funds, his peace. Jonathan slumped to the floor in his penthouse, sobbing into his palms like a broken child. Amara was gone with everything he had. She scammed him and stole all his money without a trace. He remembered the last time he cried like that. It was the night he begged his mother not to sell her only wrapper to pay his final high school examination fees. And now, he left that same woman in the rain. And he abandoned her like she didn't matter. And she said nothing, not a word. He picked his car keys, eyes bloodshot, and traveled to his village, Nsukka. "I need to see her," he said to himself. "I need to say sorry. I need to kneel before her. I need to make things right." The road was long, and for the first time, he noticed every bump, every tree, every mile that separated him from the woman who gave him everything. As he reached the village square, he saw people gathered. They looked shocked. Some cried. Others had their hands on their heads. He parked and jumped out. "What's going on?" An old man turned to him, his face pale. "She waited for you," he whispered. "We called and called. She waited to talk to you before she died." Jonathan's heart dropped. "No. Please no." He pushed past them, sprinting into the tiny compound. He rushed into her room, and there she was, lying still, on the same thin mattress she had always slept on, covered with a wrapper that looked older than him. He collapsed to the floor. "Mama, no. No. I'm here. I came. Please, wake up." But Sandra was gone. His mother was gone. And he was too late to make things right. He screamed, his voice echoing through the village. The woman who built his life had died with a broken heart. The villagers wept with him, but their comfort could not fill the hole in his soul. And that was only the beginning. Jonathan sat on the bare floor, rocking back and forth, his mother's lifeless body clutched in his arms like a child, clutching a broken toy. "Mama, please, I'm here now," he whispered through his sobs. "Please, wake up. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I've come to take you home. Please don't leave me." But Sandra's eyes would never open again. The village priest walked in quietly and knelt beside him. "My son." She waited. For days. She said, "My son will come. He'll make everything right." She never blamed you. She only prayed. Jonathan closed his eyes tightly, hot tears pouring down his face. He remembered her hands, cracked and rough from years of carrying cement and concrete to pay his school fee, her back bent from lifting heavy loads. Her voice, always filled with strength, even when she had no food to eat. He remembered it all, but it's now too late. That evening, the elders gathered in the small compound, lighting lanterns. They arranged a simple wake for Sandra. Jonathan watched from the corner, sitting under a mango tree, his clothes stained with red dust. Women sang old songs, the ones they sang for people who gave too much and died too soon. At midnight, Jonathan walked to the gravesite they had dug beside the house. He dropped to his knees in the dirt and screamed into the night, "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Mama, but I hope you give it to me." The next morning, Sandra was buried in the most humble way, wrapped in clean white linen, lowered gently into the earth by the same people she had once helped feed in the village. The village women wept, wiping their tears with the edges of their wrappers. Jonathan stayed behind. He didn't leave like a man who had somewhere to be. He stayed in the same small room where his mother slept. He sat on her mattress, barely able to breathe. The smell of soap and dust still lingered. For days, he didn't talk to anyone. Then came the 14th night. It rained again. Softly, Jonathan lay on his mother's thin bed, facing the wall. He closed his eyes, and that's when he heard her voice, clear and gentle. "My son." He turned, nobody was there, but the room felt warm, familiar, safe. Then he saw her, in his dream. Sandra stood by the window, her wrapper neatly tied, her eyes full of peace. "I saw your tears," she said. "I felt them. You made a mistake, but you've learned. I forgive you." "Mama," he said, trembling, "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," she replied softly, "but now, it's time to use your pain to heal others. That's the only way to get everything back. And one more thing, Amara will fall, but you must rise." He opened his mouth to speak again, but the vision faded. He woke up with his shirt soaked in sweat, his hands trembling. But in his heart, something had shifted. The next day, he called the local government and donated 10 million naira, his last personal saving, to build a maternity ward in Sandra's name. Then he called his lawyer. He returned to Abuja, but this time he wasn't the same man. Jonathan changed his number, sold the Bentley, and quietly shut down his massive penthouse. The media tried to reach him, but he vanished from the spotlight. Instead, he started visiting orphanages, donating food, clothes, and supplies. He paid school fees for children he didn't know. He funded widows' businesses and sat with old women who reminded him of his mother. "Why are you doing all this?" one young boy asked him. Jonathan smiled gently and replied, "Because someone once gave up everything. For me." 3 weeks later, a breaking news alert popped up on his phone. "Wanted. Amara Okonkwo, suspect in multi-million naira fraud, captured while attempting to flee Nigeria." Jonathan stared at the screen, frozen. It had happened, just as his mother said. He drove to the anti-corruption agency's office in Abuja the next morning, where an officer met him. "We recovered everything, Mr. Okoro. The funds, the assets, all of it is safe." She created a digital trail when she tried to buy a fake passport. "Her real name isn't even Amara. What is it?" Jonathan asked. The officer looked at the report. "Anita Johnson. career con artist, wanted in Kenya, South Africa, and 2 states in the US. Jonathan shook his head, remembering how she once asked him to buy her a gold-plated phone just to match her energy. "I gave her everything," he whispered. The officer folded his arms. "Sometimes it takes losing everything to see what truly matters." Jonathan didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Later that evening, he sat at Sandra's grave. "I got it back, Mama," he said quietly. "Everything. Just like you said. But I still lost the one thing that mattered the most. You." He placed a bouquet of fresh roses at her headstone. "And I'll never forget it. That year, at a youth empowerment conference in Lagos, Jonathan was invited to speak. People expected him to talk about oil, about money, about becoming a CEO, but instead, he told them his story. From the beginning. From the woman who carried bricks for his school fees, to the woman he left in the rain. And when he finished, the entire room was silent. Then he held up a photo of a beautiful baby girl. "This is my daughter," he said with a smile. "Her name is Sandra. She's the reason I'll never forget where I came from. I hope my story becomes your warning." He paused. "And if you still have a mother alive, go and hug her. Don't wait until it rains." The conference hall emptied slowly that evening, but Jonathan remained seated on the stage. He clutched the photo of baby Sandra against his chest. Outside, the clouds darkened. Rain started falling again, just like the night he left his mother standing at his gate. The moment replayed in his mind, over and over, the soaked wrapper, the quiet pleading in her voice, the rejection in his eyes. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his head bowed. He whispered to himself, "If I could go back, I'd sit in the rain with her, rather than drive away." But time was cruel, and regret, it never lets go easily. After the conference, several news outlets picked up his story. Billionaire's emotional confession leaves youth in tears. Videos of his speech trended across social media. People hailed him for his humility, but none of it brought him peace. He didn't want applause, he wanted healing. So, Jonathan went back to where it all started, his old secondary school. He walked through the rusty gate and greeted the current principal. As he toured the empty classrooms, he saw faded blackboards, broken desks, and dusty windows. In one of the classrooms, he saw a student writing math problems on the wall with a piece of charcoal. That sight shook him, because he remembered using that same trick when his mother couldn't afford a notebook. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a card, and handed it to the principal. "Call my office. We're rebuilding the entire school. I want every child here to have books, uniforms, and hope." That week, the Sandra Okoro Foundation was launched. Its mission? To provide education, food, and medical support to widows and children of single mothers across Nigeria. It was a way to honor Sandra, but it was also a way for Jonathan to keep from drowning in the weight of his guilt. Still, at night, the memories came. He would lie beside baby Sandra and watch her sleep, her tiny fingers curled into soft fists, and wonder how his mother ever did it all alone. How did she manage to protect and provide without ever breaking? The answer came one day from someone he never expected. A knock landed on his door. When he opened it, standing there was Mr. George Okoro, his father. Jonathan froze. The man looked older now. His hair grayed, his shoulders slouched. His face was thin with age and regret. "Dad?" Jonathan said quietly. George nodded, eyes red. "I came. As soon as I saw your story. I didn't know she died. I didn't even know if you were still alive." Jonathan stepped back, his heart pounding. "Where have you been for the past 30 years? George sighed. "That's a long story. One I don't deserve to tell, but I'll try." They sat down in silence. George told him how he was a banker in Lagos, how one day on his way home from work he was attacked by armed robbers, beaten and left unconscious. He lost his memory. By the time he recovered, months had passed. He didn't even remember his name. "I was in a village in Kogi State for years," he said. "An old woman took care of me. I only remembered my full name 3 years ago when a pastor prayed for me. And when I saw your name on the news last week, I knew you were my son." Jonathan sat there stunned, tears slipping down his face. "All these years," he whispered. "Mama never stopped waiting for you." George bowed his head. "And I failed both of you." Jonathan stood and left the room quietly. He walked to his backyard, stood under the rain again, and cried. Everything he had built was rising again. His company had bounced back. His story had inspired millions. He had found love again, but the one person he wanted to share it with was gone. The following morning, he took his father to Sandra's grave. They stood together, side by side, two broken men in silence. George knelt down and placed a fresh bouquet on the tombstone. "I'm sorry, Sandra," he said softly. "I should have come home. I should have found my way back to you sooner." Jonathan didn't speak. He just stood there, watching the flowers tremble in the breeze. Later that afternoon, Jonathan took his father on a tour of the Sandra Foundation hospital site under construction. As they walked through the hallways, he pointed to a large wall where a mural of Sandra was being painted, her carrying a little boy in one hand, a bag of cement on her head, and a warm smile on her face. "She was a giant," Jonathan said. George nodded, eyes moist. "And you're her legacy." As they walked out, a group of students passed by, holding free lunch packs, smiling and laughing. One of them stopped and waved at Jonathan. "Thank you, sir," she shouted. And in that moment, Jonathan smiled, a real smile. He realized something. Though he had lost his mother, he could carry her in every life he touched, in every meal served, in every scholarship given, in every woman who looked up and whispered, "Thank you." It wouldn't bring her back. But maybe, just maybe, it would make the world remember her. The rain that once washed his mother's clothes into the dirt had now become the river that watered her legacy. And for Jonathan, that was a beginning, not an end. Months passed. The name Sandra Okoro no longer lived only in the memories of a grieving son or the whispers of a small village in Nsukka. It was now the name printed on hospital walls, etched on school plaques, stitched into uniforms, and spoken daily in homes across Nigeria. But for Jonathan, it still wasn't enough. Because every night when he lay in bed, he still saw her soaked in the rain, carrying a plastic bag, smiling through her pain. One night, as he watched baby Sandra sleeping peacefully in her crib, he made a promise. "I will never let your name fade, Mama. Never." The next day, he called a press conference. Standing in front of dozens of journalists and TV cameras, dressed in a simple navy blue kaftan instead of his usual designer suits, Jonathan stepped forward. "I used to think wealth was measured in bank alerts and exotic cars," he began, his voice calm but full of weight. "But I was wrong." He paused. "I left my mother in the rain. I chose image over love, popularity over loyalty, and I paid the price. I lost everything until I found the truth again. Now, I want to use every breath I have left to make sure no mother is ever abandoned like mine." There was silence. Then cameras clicked. Reporters whispered. Hashtags trended. But Jonathan wasn't interested in clout anymore. That evening, he met with the president of the Widows' Orphans Welfare Board. He pledged to fund shelters for abandoned elderly women in every region of Nigeria. He personally visited the first construction site in Ogun State, where he knelt in front of dozens of widows, serving them rice and stew with his own hands. "You're not forgotten," he said to one blind woman who reached out to touch his face. "You're seen, and you're loved." Everywhere he went, people cried not because he was rich, but because he was real. But as his public redemption grew stronger, there was one question the media kept asking. What happened to Amara? It had been months since her arrest, and people were still hungry for justice. Rumors flew. Some said she had escaped again. Others believed she bribed her way out. But Jonathan stayed quiet. He didn't want revenge. He just wanted peace. Then one day, it happened. He received a call from his lawyer. Amara has been sentenced. 25 years. Jonathan closed his eyes. Not in triumph, but in deep, quiet sadness. Because even though she broke him, he didn't hate her. He just wished she had known a mother like Sandra. That same week, while attending a youth mentorship event in Ibadan, A young man stood up during the question and answer. "Sir," he said nervously, "how did you know you had changed? I mean, how did you know you were no longer that man who left his mother in the rain?" Jonathan smiled gently. "Because, now," he said, "when I see someone in the rain, I don't drive past. I stop." The hall clapped, but that moment stayed with him. That question. How do you know you've changed? Later that night, as he rode back to his hotel, the skies opened again. Rain poured heavily, just like before. His driver, Mr. Felix, slowed the car, but something caught Jonathan's eye. Up ahead, near the curb, an old woman sat under a nylon sheet. Her wrapper was soaked. She held a tray of bananas, most already spoiled by the storm. Without a word, Jonathan tapped the driver. "Stop here." Felix looked confused. "Sir? We're still 10 minutes. "Stop the car." The car rolled to a halt. Jonathan stepped out into the rain. He walked straight to the woman. She looked up, frightened at first, but he knelt beside her. "Mama," he said softly, "let me help you." She looked at him, stunned. "Do you know me?" "No," he said, helping her up. "But I know someone just like you." He held her tray, guided her to the car, and opened the door. He didn't care that her clothes were wet. He didn't care that the seat might be stained. She was someone's mother, and this time, he didn't leave her behind. The old woman, Mama Ebbe, wept silently the whole ride. She told him she had 5 children. All had disappeared after they made it in the city. No one called, no one visited. She sold bananas just to survive. Jonathan dropped her at a safe shelter. Then he asked to sponsor her living costs for the rest of her life. That night, he finally felt it. The change, not in the applause, not in the headlines, but in the peace. Back in Abuja, life moved on. He returned to work. His company, JGO Industries, was now partnered with several NGOs across Africa. His new wife, Adana, medical doctor, was running community health outreach programs sponsored by the Sandra Okoro Foundation. She never wore flashy clothes. She never asked for Dubai trips. She prayed with him, served with him, and stood by him. One afternoon, Adana found him sitting in the garden with baby Sandra on his lap. He was humming a lullaby Sandra used to sing to him. "You're thinking of her again?" she asked gently. Jonathan nodded. "Every day. She'd be proud of you." "I hope so," he whispered. Adana placed her hand on his shoulder. "She sees you, Jonathan. I'm sure of it." He looked up at the sky, where clouds parted and soft sunlight peeked through. And in that moment, he believed her. The rain that once carried his greatest regret had become the very thing that washed him clean. He was no longer the man who drove away. He was the man who now stopped for everyone. And somewhere, in the quiet of the wind, he could almost hear his mother's voice say, "Well done, my son." The morning sun filtered through the half-open curtains of Jonathan's bedroom in Abuja. He stood by the window, watching the golden light stretch across his garden where baby Sandra was crawling across the grass, giggling, with Adana trailing behind her, laughing gently. The sight warmed his heart. Yet beneath the peace, there was a quiet ache that never left him. It had been over a year since Sandra passed, yet her memory lingered in every corner of his life, in every act of kindness he gave, in every cry from a widow he helped, and in every heartbeat of the foundation that bore her name. But today was different. It was the anniversary of her passing, and Jonathan had something important to do. He had dreamt of her the night before again, but this time she wasn't standing in the rain. She was smiling, seated under the big mango tree in their old compound, the same tree he used to sit under while reading with her in his childhood. In the dream, she didn't say much. She only whispered, "Go back. There's something I left for you." He had woken up in a cold sweat. Now, as he packed a small bag and kissed Adana and baby Sandra goodbye, he promised them, "I won't be long." He drove alone, refusing the driver or security. For this journey, he needed silence, reflection, and truth. The road to Nsukka felt different now, not just physically, but emotionally. Every turn brought back fragments of his life. The small, dusty corner where Sandra used to buy mangoes for him after school, the market where she once sold firewood, the narrow alley where she fell once but stood up smiling, hiding the pain so he wouldn't worry. He arrived at the house just as the sun peaked. The small compound was quiet. Overgrown weeds clung to the fence. The paint on the walls had chipped. But the spirit of the place was untouched. He walked in, slowly. Inside, nothing had changed. The thin mattress still sat in the corner, her small kitchen-to-go pots neatly stacked, her old wooden spoon hanging beside them. He sat on the bed, closed his eyes. Tears rolled down quietly. And then, he remembered, "Go back. There's something I left for you." He stood, looked around the room carefully. His eyes landed on the old trunk under the bed. He reached for it. It creaked as he opened it. Inside was a carefully folded cloth, her Sunday wrapper, and beneath it, a sealed envelope. His name was written in Sandra's handwriting, "My Jonathan." With trembling hands, he opened it and began to read, "My son, if you are reading this, then I am no longer with you. And that's okay. It means you've come back. You've remembered. And for that alone, I am proud. Jonathan, I never wanted riches for myself. I only wanted them for you. I wanted you to stand tall among kings, to have the life I could never reach. But above all, I wanted you to be good, not just successful, good. The day you left me in the rain, I didn't hate you. My heart broke, but not because you embarrassed me. My heart broke because I saw how far you had gone from the boy I raised. But I forgave you that same night. I wept, but I forgave you, because that's what mothers do. They love you through your becoming. If you're reading this now, then I know you found your way back, and that is all the joy I ever wanted. I left nothing behind for you but this truth. You were always enough, even before the wealth, even before the fame. Use what you have now to lift others. And never let rain stop you from opening your heart. I love you always. Your mother, Sandra Okoro." Jonathan's hands shook as he finished reading. He pressed the letter to his chest and wept deep, long sobs that echoed through the room. Not from guilt this time, but from healing. She had known. She had always known. She wrote the letter without knowing if he'd ever return, yet believing he would. That faith, that love, was the richest inheritance he had. He stood up slowly, wiped his tears, and walked outside to the big mango tree. There, he dug a small space and buried the letter with the wrapper she had folded. A quiet ceremony between mother and son. As he stood to leave, he looked around one last time and made a decision. He would renovate the entire compound not for himself, but for the village women to come and stay when they were abandoned or alone. It would be called Mama Sandra's House of Rest. That night, as he drove back to Abuja, a soft rain began to fall. Not heavy, gentle, peaceful. And for the first time, he smiled when it touched his skin. Back in the city, things began to bloom. The Sandra Okoro Foundation expanded into 12 states. Mama Sandra's story was adapted into a school curriculum to teach students about the value of family, sacrifice, and humility. Jonathan continued his outreach programs. He met with world leaders. He donated to causes. But he never forgot where he came from. He always returned to the village every month. He always sat under the mango tree. And he always dropped flowers on his mother's grave. Adana supported him fully. She organized free medical outreaches across rural villages, often holding baby Sandra on her back while administering care. And baby Sandra? She grew. Smart, curious, gentle. Every time she heard her name, she would smile and ask, "Daddy, why did you name me after Grandma?" And he would reply softly, "Because she's the reason I'm who I am. Because even in silence, she gave me everything." When baby Sandra turned 5, they held a huge birthday party not in a luxury hall but in the schoolyard of his old secondary school. Hundreds of children came, no branded cakes, no celebrities, just food, laughter, and stories. At the end of the day, Jonathan stood before the children and shared one last story. He told them of a boy who once had nothing, whose mother carried cement on her head just so he could go to school, who abandoned her in the rain, and lost her forever. But that boy, he said, got a second chance. And you too will have many chances in life. Never waste them, and never forget who stood for you when no one else did. The children clapped. Some cried. Many ran to hug him. And in that moment, Jonathan felt something shift in the universe. He had finally become the son Sandra always dreamed of. Not the billionaire, but the man with a heart. 1 year later, a documentary titled The Rain That Raised a Billionaire was released. It featured Sandra's life, Jonathan's journey, and interviews from villagers, students, and even widows whose lives were touched by the foundation. It ended with a clip of Jonathan seated under the mango tree, looking up at the sky. The interviewer asked, "If you could say one last thing to your mother, what would it be?" Jonathan smiled softly, then whispered, "Thank you for standing in the rain for me. I promise, for the rest of my life, I will stand in the rain for others." And as the screen faded to black, so did the story. Not with sadness, but with purpose. A story that began with rain and rejection, ended with redemption, legacy, and love. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.